Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Family Scuba. As you can see from the previous video, I dive a Piranha P2 that is loud. I kind of got used to it over the last 6 months that I've been diving it, but it is extremely loud and it overpowers pretty much all the videos that I make, which makes it hard for me to dub over. So I decided to make the upgrade. It has a lot of really good reviews online. There have been some people having issues getting it going or getting it to run correctly, but those seem to always get resolved pretty easily for the most part. So I said, why not? Despite the $600 price tag, it ends up being a good upgrade in the end, but it's not without its battles getting it going and getting it to work correctly. I'll get into all of that towards the end of the video. The large majority of the video is going to be me actually installing it, replacing the bearings, and getting it all put together. And the last bit of the video will be the programming portion of it, which did not go as smoothly as I'd hoped, but Smart DPV did come through and help me through the process, through some stuff that it might be a V2 issue due to the gateway and a little bit newer software, I suppose. We did get through it, and I will show you what obstacles we had to get through and how we overcame them, and ultimately a little bit of comparison between the before replacing the smart controller and after, so that you can see the difference. It is huge. I'm glad I did it in the end. It was a bit frustrating. Somewhere along the way, I was ready to just chuck that thing against the wall, but actually probably several times, but it was definitely worth the effort of getting it to work, getting it installed, and getting it back in the water. So with that said, it's already a long video, so I don't want to ramble on for too long. Let's get into the fix, and we'll discuss a little bit more in detail the features of the new controller and all of the things you can customize and things like that. All right, let's get into it. Hope this helps you out. If it helps at least one of you, then it was worth the aggravation of trying to film everything and getting it documented. So I hope somebody gets some use out of this. Let's get into it. What is going on, guys? Today I am going to make a solid attempt at installing this new Smart DPV ESC electronic speed controller from Smart DPV, which I purchased from Explore Technologies a few months ago. There was a little bit of a delay in receiving it, but all in all, it was a good customer service experience, and here it is. I did delay in installing it, one, because I had some prior dives arranged that I wanted to get done, and I didn't want to ground the DPV in case I ran into any issues. However, here we are attempting the install. Hopefully not too many hiccups, and I'm hoping that I can get this all done in one day, but we shall see. This is just the beginning. So this is what it comes in a box, in this bag with a sticker. It says Smart DPV. What I found inside was a little bag with various screws that I imagine are for the cover and things like that. Some harnesses, a couple connector ends. Hopefully that isn't too difficult to install. I do know how to solder wires, so that should make things a little bit easier. Looks like a 3D printed mount of some sort. Not sure what that mounts to, because none of these things look like it mounts to that. But we shall figure it out. So this new ESC, as you can see, comes with a built-in fan. The positive and negative that go out to the battery modules. Comes with this new thingamabobber, Smart DPV Wi-Fi gateway. This looks like the connector to the throttle switch. I believe this is a position sensor that gets bolted to the back of the motor, and it comes complete with temp sense probe, temperature sensor probe, that you have to install as well. This, I have no idea what this connector does. This is the female end. There's male end on this side. I guess we'll figure it out. I didn't find any videos online for this. Most of the stuff that I try to put out is to fill that gap in information. Hopefully this helps somebody out. Hopefully I don't end up needing too much help myself. And we'll see how it goes. I did find some instructions on the Explore Technologies website, a link to a PDF document put out by another diver who I believe was installing it on a CUDA or something of the sorts. Mine is a Piranha, but they look fairly similar from the images in the instructions. So I'm hoping that those help me out, and then I can fill in any gaps as we go. The only thing that concerns me before I even get started is the bag says CUDA on it, but the emails that I received from Jonah, some of you may know who Jonah is, clearly stated that they were for Piranha. So with that, let's get started on the build. Hopefully I can figure out how to get this all recorded in a way that you're able to see what I'm doing. Some of those sections I will speed up and kind of explain what's happening as I go, but I don't want to make this a super long video, but I also want to keep it as informational as possible. Let's break out the Piranha and get started. All right. All right, so I got the motor tail assembly taken apart, or at least in a position where I can see everything. Going through the instructions now, it looks like this connector that I wasn't sure where it went, it replaces this harness. I'm gonna have to cut this somewhere and put the other male end, and then this will be able to unplug and plug in. I'm not sure I like that a whole lot, only because if I ever want to go back to using this ESC, it's not going to plug in. I'm gonna have to try to figure out where I can get another one of these to make it a plug and play again. But in any case, that's that. The instructions have the exact same mount that I have. So we'll see when we get there how that all goes together. So moving on, it says remove the old ESC and or motor. So we'll go ahead and remove that. However, I just realized I don't have any tools here, so I have to go get that box, and I'll be right back. All right, it says to remove the old ESC. Get these screws undone. Okay, these little screws out of the way. This unplugs by just pinching this. Comes right out for the switch. And then it says to remove the motor. However, I think I'm going to leave it plugged in, or at least installed for the time being, because I think we just have to remove this cover. So let's get this harness off of here. Off of there. Looks like these were just spliced in here, but this is heat shrink tube, so I don't think I'm going to be able to get those off without destroying all of this. So where do I want to cut? I wish they had left more lead here in case I need to reuse this. Oh man, I'm getting nervous, guys. To be honest, I almost debated not even doing any of this, considering how long it took to get the controller. I had already become accustomed to the whirring, but look at that cut. That is scary, considering this is like $250 to replace. Put that to the side and get rid of these. But as I was saying, like to record most of my dives, and having this thing making so much noise all the time, it just overtakes the sound pretty badly. So no more whirring in the videos. I'll show a comparison of before and afterwards, so you can see just how much of a difference it made. I think what I'm going to do is put a zip tie there to hold this back so I can work with these wires. Otherwise, I'm just going to be fighting that the whole time. All right. So eventually I will splice those and put that new connector on there. Actually, get that on there. I'm not even sure how that doesn't get, or maybe it does get soldered in there. Just put the end of the wire in there and then fill it in with solder. I don't know. We're going to figure that out. Actually, this needs to come off because that whole cover needs to come off. So I'll put that back on. So my plan is to just leave this on here because I really don't want to take the motor out of here. Why? Because I'm lazy. And I figured why make more work for myself than I need to. So we'll see how this works. Maybe I'll have to take it off in the end. We'll see. Oh my gosh. I'm nervous, guys. I'm going to mark this cover. I don't think I need to, but I'm going to anyway. Just old habit, I guess. I'm also taking note as to how much turn pressure this takes. Not a whole lot. Not a lot of torque on that. So get this off and go from there. I'm pretty sure the screws that they provide are replacements for these, but I don't know. Put those aside. Notice that I loosened it up in a cross pattern. I don't know that that's necessary, but again, old habits, and why not? Oh, that has little lock washers on them. Did it come off with the other one? Nope. It is still on here. Whoa, don't go in there. That's where these little magnetic light thingies are very handy. All right. And again, I will edit this video to kind of speed up the process so you don't have to sit here and watch a 3-hour video. But obviously, I'll make sure that all of the important things are noted. Oh, there that goes. Oh, good thing I can see it. Got it. Those on there. Last one. All right. Cut the wires near the solder or butt joint, which I just did. And then what? Remove the motor cap, which I'm doing. Then we have to drill some holes. Look at that. The washer stayed there. Okay. See what this looks like. Oh boy. Nervous. This is just a generic prying plastic tool. You can use anything you have around that isn't going to mar up. Oh, you know what? I know what my problem is. The motor's still under tension. So what's happening is the shaft inside the motor is binding up on the cover. So let me go grab a 10mm socket and we will get that off. Or the belt loose. All right, the way that you take the tension off of this belt is by turning this counterclockwise. And then once you have the tension off, you're going to want to drop. I'm going to use this generic Allen key that I don't know where I got from, probably from something, furniture or something. And you drop that down in the hole, and it will keep the tension off of the belt. There we go. So now there shouldn't be any tension on this thing anymore. I think. Belt loose. Yeah, the belt is loose. Oh, you know what it is? That is magnets. That is magnets. All right, it says, this doesn't say anything. It does not say anything about this being a pain. So we're just going to have to keep wiggling. Man, that is on there. Well, I really did not want to remove this motor, but I think I'm going to remove it just to make my life a little bit easier. So how do we do that? Looks like a 3mm. We need to get that one, and that one off. So those three. Then the motor will come out. So let me get that done, and then we'll resume the video. All right, I got those loosened up. So I figure I may as well let you see the whole process here. And then recall that I took the tension off of that belt. If you do end up just going straight for the motor removal, you will have to do just that. Loosen the tension on that belt. And the pulley from the motor will then be free to escape. And again, you don't need a magnet to do this part, but it sure helps. Okay. Save those. And the motor just comes straight up. See the drive pulley. You see the belt down here on the pulley for the drive shaft itself. And then of course this is the tensioner that pushes on this belt here and keeps the tension. I just filled my hand full of the heat transfer grease. So I'll get that cleaned up. Get this thing out of the way and we'll continue on with the motor. All right, got the motor out. And as you can see, all that heat sink grease is going to get everywheres. But keep on trucking here. Whoop, 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 something's happening. All I'm doing is wedging this in there and prying up gingerly, hoping I don't mess anything up in the process. Looks like the whole, what's happening is the shaft, I believe, is stuck in that bearing. I don't know what the fix is other than just pull the whole thing out. And there it is. Hopefully that was okay to do that. Doesn't look like anything was forced out. So we should be good. Set that aside. Got like a spring washer here. Looks like there is a small C-clip there. I think that does not sound good. Compared to this one. I think I got a bad bearing. I don't like it. I wonder, this looks like the same bearing, the same size as the one that sits on the back. Yeah, the back of the propeller shaft. I'm going to have to reach out to Dive Extras and see if I can't get a replacement. I don't like it. More work. Stay tuned. So quick update. It turns out you can get new bearings from Dive Extras. That is the same bearing as I suspected, as the bearing for the body of the shaft, where the shaft goes through the body of the DPV in the tail assembly. So it's the same one, I just have to get new ones. This one, as I was saying earlier, is very noisy, and you can tell just how much play it has in it. The front one's not nearly as bad, but I think I'm going to replace it anyway. Got 2 new ones on order. Okay, so as I said before, the cover stayed on there. The bearing is pressed into that aluminum cover. And since I have no better way of doing this, I'm going to be trying to pry the cover off with these tire irons. And I'm hoping that it comes off fairly easily. Let's put a little pressure on there, and it came right out. So there's the bearing. Now I don't know how I'm going to get the bearing out of there. To be continued. All right, so in trying to figure out what this thing is all about, and looking at the directions, it looks like these should, no, not the same hole pattern. Well, what I think is going on here is this mounts like so, like that. This obviously mounting inside the housing, and then this mounts here. So all of those holes line up. You got, and then this mounts, and then everything is just going to sit like this inside of the housing. There are 4 plastic screws and 4 plastic nuts that fit right into these holes. So I'm going to take a quick look to see where this mounts in the housing to figure out how this is going to go together. Stand by. All right, after some dry fitting, I realized that the reason these weren't lining up is because they line up long ways. So the holes for the old ESC are the same distance lengthwise and widthwise as the bracket. So this just mounts inside where these 4 bolts were. So we're going to go ahead and start pre-assembling this in preparation for final assembly. So I think what I'm going to do is take this over to the vise and slowly press them in because they're being kind of a pain in the butt here. So that'll be out of video, but these have to go in these holes that are cut out for these nuts. All right, as you can see, I got one of them pressed in right there, and these are yet to be pressed in. One thing I did notice right before I pressed that one in is that you'll notice these screws or these nuts have a flat side, and then this side is kind of rounded out. I'm installing those facing up so that I'm hoping the purpose of them is to center the screw in there and make it easier for them to find a thread and start screwing in. So just a quick update. By the way, when I put these in, I just barely got them started so they wouldn't fall out as even as I could. And then with the vise, just very lightly added some pressure, and they popped right in. So don't overdo it. Otherwise, you end up probably breaking this or the nut itself. All right, I went and pressed all of those in. So we've got all 4 nuts on each corner now. And I went ahead and pre-started the screws that are going to hold this down, lock this in place in the housing, in the tail housing. And they have enough plastic there and enough bite on the threads to stay in place. So this is all ready for installation. I was going to pre-install this now, but I want to get the motor back in before I get everything locked down. And I was also going to pre-install the ESC and the Wi-Fi gateway, but if you mount them on here, then it blocks these holes and you can't lock this down. So this will just be set to the side, ready to go for install once we have the rest of it put back together. All right, guys, after much debate, trying to figure out what I was going to do about getting this bearing out, ultimately decided to go on Amazon and buying this cheap puller. And I do mean cheap. This thing does feel like if I had to use it for any serious applications, anything other than aluminum probably would not work very well. But it did the job for this, and I think it will work for other scuba related repairs possibly. So I think it was worth the 25 bucks that I spent on it over trying to make my own extractor. I'm sure I'll use it again. The way it works is it has various sizes of these finger adapters. As you can see there, it's got kind of a lip on there. You put it into the bearing, and when you screw this in, it spreads those fingers out, locking that bearing in. And then you're able to pull it out with this tool by just simply pulling this bolt out that attaches to this, and thereby extracting the bearing. So that's done. Next thing is time to get a center punch and start drilling some holes. I think I don't have my center punch readily available, so I'll probably just use a pick or a screwdriver and punch a hole in that aluminum, or at least a divot, to start drilling the holes. It looks like a 1/2-inch hole here, and then 1/4-inch holes on 2 of these. I gotta look at the instructions again. But that's it. All right, I'll set up to do the drilling, and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so I went ahead and punched a starter hole, a center, where we'll have a 1/2-inch hole drilled. Then it says, with the original power cable hole at 3 o'clock, we want another 1/4-inch hole at 12 o'clock and 1:30. So these two in that orientation. I guess would be in that orientation. No, that was right. So original one at 3 o'clock, center, 12 o'clock, 1:30. And you'll have the same instructions that I have in front of you when you're doing this, so no worries. All right. I'm going to pause the video because I'm going to put this thing in a vise and drill them there, but it's drilling holes. Keep in mind that this is very soft aluminum. I don't know if you can tell, but the holes that I pre-punched actually push through all the way to the backside. I'll show you how soft this aluminum cap is. So it should drill fairly easily. We shall see. I'll be back. All right, really quickly, I did start the holes. As expected, they drill very easily. But one small side tip is start out with a much smaller drill bit. That will get you centered on your pre-punched notch and get the hole started much easier, and then scale up to the larger sizes. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up with the 1/4-inch here and the 1/2-inch in the center. All right, got the holes drilled. Took my Dremel tool, ran them across the edges, smooth everything out. And that's it. Clean this up, make sure there isn't any debris in there, and we're ready for the rest of the process. Still waiting on the bearing though, so hopefully that gets here in a few days. All right. All right, so in order to change that bearing out, we need to get the pulley off. This drive pulley. This, I believe, is a 5/64 Allen key. Get that off of there. Those look like they have Loctite on them. So I believe you should not have to take them all the way out. It's already sliding, so it's not pressed in there. I'm just going to take these out. And they do appear to have some, can't get it to focus, some red Loctite, and this pulls right off. It's got a couple dimples on there, line up with these 2 holes. I did mark this. There's a line here, a line there, just for reference, but it really doesn't go on any other way. So that comes right out. The spring washer comes out. Can't forget to put that back on. And then this should just pull off. Let's see. Nope, not coming out. So to the vise. I'll let you know how it goes. All right, the vise idea did not work because this is a really strong magnet and it was just making it a pain in the butt. I just wanted to keep sticking to the vise. So I dug this thing out from my garage, and even just turning it by hand, it is pulling the bearing out. And I put that piece of wood there because I was afraid of scratching up or denting the surface. But as you can see, It's already starting to come out pretty easily, but it still needs just that little bit of pressure from the puller. So I'll keep doing that, get it the rest of the way out, clean that shaft up. You can see a little bit of surface rust on there. Take some 3M Scotch pads. They sell these in bulk on Amazon, and they work great for removing gaskets and surface rust. So I'll use that. And then we'll be ready for the bearing install once those come in. Hopefully it won't be too much longer. Oh, side note, see that black line I drew there? That's just to get the pulley to the exact same depth that it was when it came out. Don't know if that's necessary, but I did that anyway. So we'll see once everything starts going back together. Awesome. And that is it. Let's see the little bit of surface rust there, but easily taken care of. It's real light with this Scotch pad. And done. That is it for that. Now I just gotta install the bearings. Excellent. You know what I did? I ended up almost completely erasing the mark that I had on here, but I can still see it a little bit right there. All right, moving on. Well, it took a few days, but they actually came a day early. Got some bearings. Whoa. So I'm going to make an attempt at putting this back together, and we'll see what happens. New bearing. I think, not sure how or what the best approach is going to be, but I think what I'm going to do is put the bearing on here, on the rear cap, and the bearing on here, and try assembling it that way. So let's do that and see what happens. All right, that's where it was. And my line disappeared for the most part. It's still a little bit there, but I can see the indentations that these put in the shaft, so I'm trying to line it up with that as well. And there's still enough of the Loctite on there that I'm not going to worry about putting any more on. There. Just snug those up. That's good. Okay. And again, this thing's like everything else. This thing's aluminum, so be careful. Tightening those down. You don't want to destroy the threads. All right, and then of course don't forget that washer, which I believe is just to prevent some vibration. Now this is the part I was dreading. because as soon as I put this shaft in there, it wants to stick to the wall, and it is not easy to get everything lined up, but let's give it a whirl. The question is, did that washer go in? It looks like it went in. Yeah, I can hear it right there. I can see it. So I can see the washer in the gap right here. So I know it's in the spot where the bearing's going to press into. So I'm trying to wiggle that down. I wonder if the best way to do this is to press it in with the vise. Just kind of work it in there. All right, I'm going to try that and I'll be right back. All right, that didn't take long. I actually ended up just taking the rubber mallet, tapped it literally like that hard, and it fell right in. And through that gap, I can see that that spring washer is sitting nice and flush and straight all around. So now that that's done, it's time to put this bearing in. And try to get the cover to go on flush. These should just press right in pretty easily. But if all else fails, put it in the vise. So I just took a socket. You want to push it by the outer race and press it in. So I'm going to go ahead and do that because I'm tired of banging on this, and be right back. Oh yeah, I should have used the vise from the start. Popped right in. Perfect. No more grinding. Now we have to... So this is going to be a little tricky because we have to... So the one with the chamfer here is our original hole for this wire. This one, the way it's routed in the picture is through here. Then it's supposed to come back through the bottom and then back in on the other side here. That's how they got it. That's how I'm putting it in. All right. And then this little guy is supposed to ride in this gap here. So let's see if I can't get that in. I think I'm going to save myself some aggravation and go lock this in the vise and come right back. That was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. What I did, because the magnets, it's several magnets in there. What they want to do is stick to one side or the other inside the winding assembly. The shaft is going to be a little bit crooked one way or the other. If you start the bearing, and I just used the mallet, it actually worked out a lot easier than on the cover. It'll start it out, and then I was able to use the cover itself to line up one of the holes, tapped it down a little bit more, put a screw in, tapped down a little bit more, and then was able to get it to line up, push down, lock in place, and then I put the other screw in, and everything spins like normal, and life is good again. I will say that this was a little tricky. I honestly really don't know where that sensor ended up. I'm almost wanting to just pull that out and move it to the other side of the harness of this connector. That way at least I know it's being pushed outward. Away from the stator assembly or stator assembly. Should not be hitting it because it's pointed. It should be like right around here. And the spinning part is like over here. So I think it'll be all right. Not too worried about it. But yeah, just keep in mind that it's impossible to know exactly where that's going when you're struggling with this cover. All right, that is that. Now it's time to solder this thing on. And I'm going to get that prepped and try to get that done without screwing it up too bad. All right. I'll show you what I got going on here so far. I took some solder and I cut it up and I put it in the holes. I've never soldered connections like these before. I'll link a video that I found on the YouTubes that showed me this method of doing this. But basically you stuff a bunch of solder in there, you apply heat, this melts, and you jam the wire in there. I've already went ahead and put the cover, the rear cover on here, and take note of the pattern or the direction of these wires. So red, white, and black, red, white, and black. So it'll connect like that once it's done. They have to be in the right order. Keep that in mind. And one of the things with soldering is one, you have to have good heat transfer. So get some solder started on your soldering iron. This one's clean right now, but I'll get some soldering iron solder on there. Put it on the back side here. And of course, if you get good heat transfer into here, it's going to want to transfer into everything else around it. You don't want to melt this connector. So I'm going to put something metal behind it. I'm going to try using needle nose, some smaller pair to hold the inside in there, hopefully creating enough of a heat sink to dissipate some of that unwanted heat from reaching the connector itself. We'll see how that goes. I wish I had 3 hands, but I don't, so I'm gonna have to use the vise. And before I do that, I got to strip these wires. You can use pretty much anything you have. I've got several pretty decent ones. This one's probably my favorite. To get about, you only need about maybe 3/8 of an inch stripped, and you're good to go. So sorry again, I'm gonna have to go off camera, get this soldered. I'll tell you how that process went, but I'll have a video linked on in the description so that you can see somebody doing this. All right, let's see how this goes. All right, definitely not my best work, but it will do. I'm gonna throw some liquid gasket on there. Just to cake it up. Should be good. That's probably way too much, but that's all right. All right. I just got to squeeze that connector on. part will be done. I think I'm at the point where I can go ahead and drop the motor in. I still have to install the magnet that goes on the shaft, but I'm going to wait to do that until I get the motor in. I already installed a piece of cardboard in the drive belt that just aids in holding the belt in place. I made a whole nother video about replacing the belt and the bearings and stuff like that, and I talk about a video that explains how to make that little piece of cardboard and how to use it to install the motor. It's not rocket science. I didn't use the template that's provided in that other video and the other information that I found. I just eyeballed it. Doesn't fit perfect, but it works. So it's huge pain to try to do this and keep everything in view of the camera, so I'm going to go ahead and drop the motor in, and then we'll be back. We'll go from there. Before I forget, don't forget to reapply heatsink grease, or paste, whatever you want to call it, on the heat block, the heatsink block. Apparently it's critical according to some information I read online. Recently somebody installed a Smart DPV and was having a lot of issues. It turned out that heatsink was missing and created a lot of problems for him. So make sure you got a good heatsink and some good paste heat dissipation compound on there, and you won't run into any problems. So I wanted to throw that in there before I forgot, before I put the motor in and you didn't see all of that, but you should have seen the paste all over my hands throughout most of this video because I keep getting it on there. All right, let me drop this motor in and we'll go from there. All right, I got the motor in. Before I put tension on the belt, I want to get the motor locked in. But before I did that, just really quickly, I wanted to show you guys the washers in case you've never worked with washers. There is a right way and a wrong way to install them. So you can tell that's the flat end. That's the rounder end. The flat end always goes down. The round end goes towards the bolt. And that's so that when you tighten the screw down, you get proper and even distribution of pressure. But just want to throw that in there. Just little things that may not make a difference, but you also don't want this motor rattling itself apart. So just keep that in mind. So the motor's in. One thing to keep in mind is you want to make sure that there's a slight gap between that bolt right there that is bolted into the top of the drive shaft and the motor housing. Shouldn't be rubbing. As long as you have a good gap there, or it's, you know, some kind of gap, go ahead and tighten down the 3 bolts holding the motor down, and you should be good to go. The next thing I'm going to do is glue that magnet on there. While that's drying, I'll go ahead and start putting the mount in and the ESC and the rest of the components, and then I'll start locking everything down on top of the motor. So I'll get that started and be right back. This is the magnet. It's got a little cover. Of course I dropped it. I'm just going to use some Gorilla Clear Grip. This stuff's pretty nasty and it dries really quickly. We'll see how that goes. So per the instructions, I want you to glue the magnet up without making a huge mess. Just making sure it's centered. I think that's centered. And that it's not going in the shaft. Should be good. And we're just going to let it dry. In the meantime, I'm going to replace these 2 bolts. These 2 are the new ones that they provided. And in order to get the position sensor on there correctly, they provided some longer screws. But you do have to reuse the lock washers that are on there, so don't forget to reuse those. Let's see if I can get these out without banging everything around. Try not to lose those little tiny washers. Like there. Get it on the new longer bolt. Put those to the side for when we install the position sensor. Now, I just realized I already know I made a mistake, and I don't like it. But I'll figure it out. So this connector is supposed to be over there. It's going to be in the way here. What I can probably do is just move it out of the way and leave it there. But I'll see how that goes when I go to put the position sensor on. And I thought this would have been dry already. Usually dries pretty quickly. But I might have to leave that overnight and see how it goes. In the meantime, I'm going to keep going because I want to get more of this done. This goes right there. Take these screws out. And I'll get this thing mounted. Be right back. So I ran into a bit of a snag with a couple things. One, the instructions say to reuse the old ESC bolts. These are way too short for this mount. It has to overcome the thickness of the base plate here. And then there is this plate here, which is probably close to the same thickness as this, maybe a little bit less. In any case, these bolts were not nearly long enough. Fortunately, the old case cover bolts are the same thread. They're just too long, so I cut it down. I don't know if you can tell that, but essentially I got them down to, I don't think you can see that, 550 thousandths of an inch, so just a hair over half an inch. Now they're the right size, but even though the holes on this are pretty close, they're not close enough. And in the process of trying to get the bolts in, I snap this thing. So I'm going to jam a bunch of glue in there and let it sit overnight because I am done messing with this thing for one day. I think what I'll do is after the glue dries, I'm going to elongate a couple of these holes, and that should resolve my issue. Oh, the thing just completely fell apart. Fantabulous. Anyway, I'll get that on there and continue on. To be continued. So I was thinking about this a little bit more, and I thought that glue on its own was not going to solve my problem. So using if this thing will focus, a old coat hanger, I cut a piece of it off, drilled a hole, pushed it through, and I'm going to push it through the other end with some glue, and that should give me a good solid anchor point. Hopefully it works. Got this thing glued on and put back together. Actually came up better than expected. It's probably the strongest piece on this mount right now. I also went ahead and elongated these holes a little bit with the Dremel tool. Hopefully everything fits in the tail assembly right there where the old ESC was. So let me drop that in there and we'll get her done. Got it on there nice and secure using the 4 bolts that I shaved down to the correct length, and it's nice and solid. Start getting the ESC on, and the way that's going to go is something like this. That's going to sit there and screw on both ends here, like so. The only thing is I think it needs to go this way, because otherwise the Wi-Fi gateway is not going to fit. I want to say it goes fan in, but not 100% sure. I'll try to get that all fitted in there and get back. Show you what it looks like. Got everything in. went in pretty easily for the most part. It did make sense to have the fan on the inside just because better airflow. So it fit this way. I'm going to install it and leave it that way. Everything's pretty solid as it can be for what it is. I did realize that I forgot to put the protective cover on the motor wire. That's all right. I just split this open, zip tied it on. I'm going to put another zip tie right here to hold it in place. That's just mainly for chafing anyway. And everything else is in. Put another zip tie right here to hold these down. And we're almost ready to test it out. Awesome. One thing I forgot to mention is I did install the position sensor already. And I do not like this. It's got, you can see the gap right there. And the screw, like, I tightened these down as much as I felt comfortable tightening down. But I am not convinced this is going to stay here. I don't know. I think I might end up getting some stainless steel washers and putting them on there just to get more bite on this plastic. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like some of the build of this stuff could be a little bit better, but it is what it is. People have installed these in many DPVs that I'm aware of, and I've never heard of any issues. So fingers crossed that we get it running. Let's go. All right, the moment of truth. Everything spins. I don't hear any rubbing anywhere. Let's get some power. Oh, oh boy. I was not expecting that. Out of curiosity, let's hit the trigger and see what happens. Nothing. All right, so per the directions, I'm supposed to connect to the Wi-Fi and then go to an IP address, which is, I'm assuming, the IP of the gateway. So let me try that out and see what happens. And before I forget, this is in the instructions. The wires on the switch are blue, black, and white, and the ones on the controller are white, red, and black. Per the instructions, just line up the white wires and connect it. The supplied bag of goodies did come with this. I don't know if they want you to swap that out, but that one plugged in just fine, so I'm leaving it. All right, let me go back and do this Wi-Fi thing. Couple things to update here. I ended up switching these boxes, controller on this side, on the, I guess, the bottom side, because this lead is pretty short compared to the old one. And when the module sits on here, when it was over here, it was a pretty tight fit. So I flip-flopped these, got everything back in there. I like the way the power cord is tucked over here on this side now instead of coming through here. So that is good. The only issue, or the snag I've run into, is that it will not calibrate. Well, I take that back. It does something. The motor spins. It appears to calibrate, but the screen where I'm supposed to hit save to save the calibration doesn't let me hit that button. It's not highlighted. I can't. It's there, but I can't use it. Reached out to Jonah Silverstein. I believe he's the owner of Explorer Technology, and he asked me to reach out to Smart DPV via Facebook Messenger. I've done that. They have seen my messages, the photos and videos that I sent them, and they have not responded. So I know it's Europe. I think they have a weird thing about working weekends. So I'm going to give it a few days, and if that doesn't help, or if they don't reach out, I'll see what the community can help with. Maybe someone else has run into this problem. Very disappointing, but you know, it is what it is. We'll figure it out. Hey guys, I finally got it. Just kidding, I wired the old ESC in. Still working on the problem, but I did notice that it's significantly quieter with new bearings in it. Huge difference. With the sensor centered, it says magnet not detected. If I move it off center, error message goes away. Put it back on center, comes back. Off center, back. Okay, I'm gonna try to keep this brief, but I'll do a quick overview of how to connect to the gateway and some of the issues or obstacles we had to overcome. So the first thing you're going to want to do is obviously turn on your Piranha once everything's installed. And the instructions say to open up a browser and punch in an IP address after connecting to the unit. The new software, I believe is part of the version 2, just automatically takes you to the dashboard. So you're good to go there. Once you're here, you're going to want to go to motor setup. At motor setup, it's not going to let me do it because mine's already set up. At least that's my impression. You're going to hit that. If that doesn't work, or it doesn't take you to the motor setup screen, what we had to do was open up a new browser. And instead of allowing the gateway to connect automatically, we had to punch in the IP address that's in the instructions. And the instructions say that after connecting the Smart DPV access point, you want to punch this into your web browser. However, it now connects automatically, and I think that's causing an issue, or at least thereabouts is what I was told when speaking to Smart DPV. So once you open up a new browser, you go to the motor setup, and then it'll be available here. Once that completes, as a quick side note, when I hit it, it asked me for a password. I dive a Piranha. The password happened to be lowercase Piranha. Any issues, I would reach out to Smart DPV. But I would imagine if you have a CUDA, it's going to be CUDA. If you have a Piranha, it's going to be Piranha, and so on. So once that was done, then I went to the calibration. It'll automatically run through a calibration process, and you'll be good to go. Once it is good to go and everything's all set up, when you activate it or turn it on out of the water, it only goes in one speed. It's like 50% or something like that. I was told that it gauges speed off of amperage draw, not RPM. So it needs the resistance of the water to know what speed it's in and to adjust the propeller speed. That is about it with the setup. Just very briefly, we did have a issue early on. I had a bunch of red everything, and that was because of the motor. Besides the connectivity issues that I described and having to go to a different browser and manually punching in the IP to resolve that, we also had some position sensor problems. Ultimately, once the motor was calibrated, or I should say, once the motor was set up and we tried doing the calibration process, I kept getting an error on the top of the screen here, and you'll likely get errors as well. I think there were some quick screenshots of that in previous slides, and it'll tell you what you need to do. Most of the time, I would imagine at the beginning of this whole process, it's going to be you need to set up the motor, you need to calibrate it.
I would start with the motor setup, calibration, and then go from there. The issue that we were having, the check for that initially, because it wasn't calibrating, even after figuring out the connectivity issues, was to check the position sensor. So you can go to your dashboard, hit the button here, and then if you turn, I'm going to try to turn it with my foot here because my DPV is on the floor. If you turn the propellers, it will show you movement on the screen here. Unfortunately, mine doesn't like doing that. Every time I try doing the position sensor test, it wants to disconnect. But generally, I can do a quick spin with my hand and see that it's working, and it was working, um, at least on the test. So this is where the confusion started. Um, I kept getting a sensor error, and even though the it was passing the sensor test, sorry, I'm disconnecting the battery so I can restart it. Even though it was passing the sensor test, the calibration wasn't completing. Motor setup, again, the motor setup was a connectivity issue. Got that resolved. Tried doing the calibration. Calibration wasn't working. Kept getting a sensor fault code or a sensor problem. Ultimately, it turned out that the sensor was fine, and it was just a bad magnet. I don't know how that is. I don't understand how that magnet is reading on the sensor, so that's beyond my scope. But they sent me a new sensor and a new magnet. I was told to replace the magnet and retest it, and then everything worked. Um, Prior to that, I ended up moving the sensor. I took the screws out and I moved the sensor back and forth, and eventually I could get the code to go away. But of course, it was so off center that it didn't work. So at least we knew that the sensor was reading. Oddly enough, replaced the magnet, put it all back together. The code was gone. I calibrated it. Everything worked. So that's my story. But let me get back in here and very briefly, very quickly go over the other things you can use this for. Again, mine now works and everything connects, and I can use it, and I can use my phone on site and stuff like that. So all of that is great. So if you go to setup or the Piranha button over here, these are all your speeds. You can change these. You can put anything you want in there. You can kind of match this to the speeds of anyone that you're diving with that has a different scooter, different DPV. That way you're all on the same, going the same speed and not having to come on and off the trigger as much. It also gives you the option to change at what speed you start. If you want to have a turbo to go straight to 100% with 3 clicks, I have the double click to start check because a couple times the tow rope wrapped around the button and started when I didn't want it to. So it's great that it gives you the option to use that. And then the cruise control, I do have clicked on there. I haven't used it seriously, but it does work and it is kind of convenient. So it's checked for the time being. I really don't know what these numbers mean. Those are on there. I haven't messed with them because it doesn't. I don't know how they would change the operation, and it operates great right now. So I'm leaving it. It does have a bunch of beeps when you turn it on, turn it off. When you uh, go to turbo mode, it goes through a sequence of beeps just for fun, I guess. And I left it on just because it hasn't annoyed me yet. You also have the option of having your fan always on. I haven't found the need for that. Have not. I don't have enough trigger time on it to really know if it's going to be necessary or not. But so far, I don't believe it will be, especially since most of the time I'm diving in 50-degree water or colder. What else on here? It comes in an SD card, so it'll throw a bunch of faults and save data on there. On the dashboard, if you go on a dive, you'll see that a bunch of these numbers here will change. Obviously, the voltage will decrease, but it'll track how many watts of power you've used per trip, and then you can leave it if you're doing multiple dives, and you'll know how much you've used the entire time, and you can use that for tracking your own numbers and stuff like that. It's kind of cool information. RPMs, if I turn the scooter on right now, it's not going to read anything because it doesn't track RPMs. Again, it does it by amperage draw. You got your temp sensors on here. If you're curious about how hot this thing is getting, you could always connect to it with your phone as soon as you're done with the dive and see where it's at. If you like tracking that kind of thing and just seeing what the water temperature and run times are doing to the temperature inside the DPV, you can always check that as well. What else? System. This is the controller and gateway information. I didn't change anything on here other than the name. I did change the name on here. You can put hotspot, the Wi-Fi hotspot name change there, and then apply settings and it will save it. And this is for updates apparently. I haven't had to do this because I think I have the latest firmware in there. So that's the fast version of it. I really don't think I have much more to add anyway, so it's kind of the whole version. Uh, Hopefully that helps someone. Hopefully it helps you get it set up. If you have any issues and this doesn't help you, Smart DPV was very good about responding to messages via Messenger, Facebook Messenger, and helping me get this resolved and get it running so I can get it in the water. Reach out to them. Their customer service is pretty good. Hope this helped again, like I said, and we'll see you on the next one.